Hello, good afternoon, everybody. This is Brett Lonsdale, and welcome to our Extending Microsoft Teams with Lightning Tools webinar. This week, we're going to be taking a look at the products that Lightning Tools has to offer, and typically we'll be spending about an hour on each of the different products in our portfolio and focusing mostly on Microsoft SharePoint. But what we want to do is just demonstrate to you how each of our products can also work in Microsoft Teams, and also have the announcement of a brand new product for Microsoft Teams as well, known as MyTeams. So we're going to be taking a look at that towards the end of today's webinar. So first of all, I just want to welcome you to the webinar, and thank you very much for joining and taking time for that. For those of you who are not familiar with Lightning Tools, I'm just going to spend a brief moment, just tell you a little bit about who we are, and then we're going to jump into exploring the different products and how they work in Microsoft Teams. So yeah, first of all, Lightning Tools, we're a company that has been established since 2007. So we've celebrated our 15th year last month, and yeah, for those 15 years, we've been providing different products for Microsoft SharePoint. So starting off with a product known as BDC MetaMan, and moving into some of the tools that we still have today, including that one, which is things like the Lightning Conductor and DeliverPoint and Social Squared and so on. These are still in our portfolio, and they've come on a long way from when they were first built for SharePoint 2003 and SharePoint 2007. Yeah, they've iterated a lot since then. So we're headquartered in the UK. We also have a US subsidiary, Lightning Tools LLC, which is based in Orlando, Florida as well. And so it's, yeah, between those two locations, we provide our services of support and onboarding and so on. And yeah, building the products here on this side of the pond. So first of all, let's just take a look at what the products are that we're going to be talking about today. So first of all, we're going to take a look at the discussion boards. So Social Squared is the first product that we're taking a look at, and how we can use that to really extend the types of communication and engagement that you get inside of Microsoft Teams, not as a sort of chat or instant messaging or posts tab for announcements and things like that, but more as a sort of Q&A type forum where over time we can build a knowledge base that continues to serve people as they join the organization in the future. So we'll be taking a look at that and how that can be used in each of our different teams, or even across multiple teams as well if you need it to. We'll then be switching gears and going up to content reporting. So we're going to be taking a look at how we can aggregate content, not just from SharePoint lists and SharePoint libraries, but also from other entities such as Microsoft Graph entities, so things like Planner and To Do, OneDrive, Teams itself, and so on. And the aim there is to bring content to where we're working. So we're spending a lot of time now, at least I am, working inside of Microsoft Teams all day long. And mostly, I'll be in one or two of the different teams that are most important to me. And it'd be really handy to not have to switch applications and switch focus to something like SharePoint in order to be able to navigate to a document library to find the files, or to find a task list, or even go to a different app like Planner in order to be able to see what tasks I have to do today. It'd be more useful if they're right by where I'm working and inside a tab inside of the team that I tend to have open all day long. So we'll be taking a look at content reporting and how that can be used. We'll then jump into some data visualization, and we'll take a look at how that can work on a dashboard page that is being served from SharePoint into Teams, but we'll also be looking at the data viewer as a standalone tool as well. So if you want to build a chart that may be based on some Excel work documents, or maybe some external data sources like an SQL Azure database that your organization uses as a line of business application, or even if you just want to bring in a SharePoint list from somewhere and display a chart based upon that inside of your team, that's the type of thing that we'll be doing today using the data viewer. Permission reporting. So whenever we talk about DeliverPoint, we're usually focused on SharePoint lists and SharePoint libraries, broken permission inheritance in folders, managing permissions in large scales, and copying and transferring permissions between different users. Today, we're going to focus on Teams and really how DeliverPoint can help serve Teams as well. So when you're working inside of Teams, as a team owner, or maybe a team owner for multiple different teams, we've still got those same types of challenges that we face inside of SharePoint. And that might be that one of our team members is changing roles and we need to switch their permissions around, and we don't want to have to do it on each team but also on each file or each folder. We'd rather be able to do that in one action, and that's the type of thing that we can do with Deliver Point. We can also highlight areas where we're sharing links as well, so we can really keep on top of our sharing links and make sure that the right people have access to those sharing links, and we've removed the sharing links that we no longer need. We'll then be taking a look at forms, and whilst forms is not really specific to Teams, you can connect via the SharePoint Teams tab or channel tab and bring in a SharePoint list to that tab. And once you've got that SharePoint list displayed, you'll be able to see the customized forms that you've created using Lightning Forms. So sometimes it's really handy to actually have a business form local to where you are, or at least be able to collect the data from that form into a SharePoint list and have that present there inside of Microsoft Teams. And lastly, we're going to jump into the brand new product, MyTeams. And what MyTeams is all about is to be able to aggregate some information. So you may be thinking, well, is this another Lightning Conductor? No, it's not. So the MyTeams application is a great way of something that you don't actually need to really configure. You can just add or access MyTeams from your personal apps over on the left-hand side of Microsoft Teams, and you'll be able to see files, you'll be able to see app mentions, and you'll be able to see events from different channels and different teams that you're a member of, but select those that are most important to you. So if you're like me, you may be a member of 10 or hundreds of teams, and not all of them you really need to look at every single day. And sometimes you'll see a banner that somebody's mentioned you, or you're looking for a file and you can't remember where you put it, or where somebody else may have put it. Or it might be that people are creating channel events and not necessarily inviting you to those events. So they're not inside your personal calendar, but they are taking place as events, and we're not able to see them unless we actually go to each channel and add the channel calendar app. So that's the purpose of MyTeams. I can choose the teams that are most important to me, and then from those teams we're going to be able to see that information. We're going to see the app mentions, we're going to see the events, and we're also going to see the files. And it doesn't really take much configuration at all. As I said, you can just go through and access it. So let's jump in and take a look at some of these products. So we'll start off with Social Squared. And if you haven't seen Social Squared before, Social Squared is a discussion board tool, or a discussion forum, as you may refer to it. And a forum is different in nature to the type of thing that we have going on with a posts tab inside of Teams. That's not to say that the posts tab is not a fantastic tool. It's different. It has a lot of the same features as Social Squared, but it's still different. We can build out different forum groups and different forums with Social Squared, which allows us to get deeper into conversations and categorize those conversations. So if you imagine in this scenario, and we'll have a look at this scenario in just a moment if you can't see the screen too well, but in this scenario here with the screenshot, we've got some different forum groups where people can ask technical questions about Teams and about Planner and about programming in different programming languages, or maybe about SharePoint. If we just had a technical support team with the posts tab, it's quite likely that we're going to get lots of different questions that just go out of scope. They're going to disappear on that feed. We're not going to see that that question was asked. Either that, or we're going to have to browse a lot up and down. We're going to have to scroll up and down a bit to be able to see these questions. They then don't have a point of ownership. So nobody actually owns a specific type of question when it's inside that posts tab. So sure, we could create different channels and again, achieve different categories of conversations based on maybe these different technologies or any other type of subject, but you still got that continual feed that goes out of scope. And if we imagine that we might have somebody joining the company in about 2 months' time that has the same question in their mind as to one that was asked today, then that could be a challenge when trying to find that Q&A. They may not even know that it exists. Whereas with Social Squared, sure, you can actually go through and navigate these different categories of conversations, or you can also search them. So let's jump in and take a look at how that might work. So here we are, we're inside of Social Squared. So this is the tech support scenario. Now, one of the benefits of this is it's here in Teams, the content is in Teams as well, and therefore it's secured by Teams. So the user management is all going on by adding members into the team, and of course having an owner of that team who can go through and configure Social Squared. But we've got added functionality as well for things like moderators that you'll see in just a moment. But let's just navigate it. So rather than have the posts tab that I'm sure you're all familiar with, here is the tab for Social Squared. And you can see I've got the different forum groups, and each of these can be expanded and collapsed so we can easily sort of display the ones that are more important to us at this moment in time. What we can also do is focus in on those different channels as well. So notice how we've got Social Squared here inside the Microsoft Planner team channel that we might have. And what we can do is configure that to only show the Microsoft Planner forum group. So then we've got more context when we're going into each of these different channels as well. So when I'm back here in the general tab, we can certainly go through, access the different forum groups. And like I said, we can search them, we can use different tag clouds and so on in order to be able to find our content. So if I was having a question about Planner, what is Planner or something like that, I could just do a search on Planner and I can see all the different posts here to do with Planner, and we can drill into those topics and have a look at those. And if we don't see the question answered that we're looking for, we can just simply navigate into the Planner forum. So as I go into here, we can see some different questions that have been asked about Planner. In the scope of that, we can go in and simply reply to them. So there's a question there. We can hit reply, and this is my reply. There we go. So we can pop that in there. We've got all the ability to add images. We can style our response and so on. And quite a lot of the time, forums are also used to discuss actually programming and so on. So we could embed some code that maybe we wrote with JavaScript, and it would actually maintain the structure of that code as well inside that post. You can also make it easier to find this content by adding tags as well. So I could add the Planner tag. If there was tags that have already been used, I could also pick from them as well. So that's just a simple reply. And what Sandy might do in this case is mark my reply here as answered. I can do this because I'm the owner of the team. Ordinarily, I wouldn't be able to do that, but yet you can see here, I can go through and mark that as answered. And that makes it easy to find, because we could have hundreds of different replies in here. And what you've got the ability to do is just show the answer, or show the multiple answers, or even sort by answers if you want to, in order to be able to find that content. So that was created some time ago, and yeah, it may serve me today in knowing what that question was. Now, as I mentioned, you can also have moderators. So here's a question about, have you heard about Viva? Well, that's unlikely to get answered here inside the Planner forum. So as a moderator, what I could do is actually go through and move that. So I could move it through to one of the Viva forums. So we can simply go through and select it, move the topic, and that's then going to be shifted across to the Viva forum, where it's more likely to get responded to. So that's the type of thing that we can do. And as we go into some of these forums, you can see we've got ratings. We can see the posts that have been marked as answered. We've also got the ability to pin posts as well, make them sticky so they retain at the top of the forum. And we've also got subscriptions, so we can subscribe to a forum or even subscribe to a topic so that we actually get notified through Teams or also through email should somebody reply to us. So let's just have a look at how we can go about creating new forums and new forum groups. Something that's been recently announced by Microsoft is a couple of new modules inside of Viva. So maybe we should go through and create some forums for those. So I'm going to go into the forum settings here, and under Viva, we can click onto the forums. We can add a couple of forums. So in here, we'll have Viva goals. And we could write a description about that. So Viva goals questions. And here I can add a moderator. So we might have a subject matter expert on Viva goals. And the benefit of doing that is that that subject matter expert effectively becomes an administrator, a moderator of that one particular forum. So they can have the power to remove posts. They can move posts between forums, they can edit posts and so on, and basically make sure that that conversation is governed and those questions get answered as well. So, so there's a brand new forum that we've now created. So as I come down here, we can see the Viva Gold forum. We can click onto that, and I can also subscribe to it as well. So anybody posting in there, I'm going to get notified of that new post. And Social Squared has lots of other views as well. There's a tag cloud, which actually helps you to navigate the content. So you can see all the different tags that have been used inside this forum. Clicking on SharePoint, clearly that's been used a lot. So we can see all the different posts with the tag of SharePoint in it. And we've also got other views as well, like unanswered topics. So all of those could be in one place. We can see followers. So people are able to follow me and I can follow them as well. So we can get notified about other people posting inside the forums. So that's the type of idea. And one of the benefits of this is we can have this span multiple teams as well. So through the settings, we're able to specify another team or another SharePoint site where we want to get the forums from. So that way, if we had maybe a sales team and we had a marketing team, both of them could actually contribute to the same forum groups, but retain their own team. They can be inside their own team as they're joining those conversations. And the same goes for SharePoint as well. You could have this same forum group show up inside of SharePoint. All right, so that's just a great introduction, hopefully, to Social Squared. There is a couple of questions regarding that as well, so I'll try to answer some of those as we go. But yeah, Yammer Communities is slightly different to a traditional forum group and forum, but I'll try and answer that in a bit more depth as we go along. It's one of the questions that's been answered or asked, sorry. And another one is about migration. And yes, we do have migration tools, so we can talk about that a little bit later on as well. So that helps you to migrate content from standard discussion boards into Social Squared. Okay, so that is our first product that we took a look at. So that's the Social Squared discussion boards. Moving on to content reporting. So this started off life as the product that would help you to aggregate from different lists and different libraries that exist in different sites and different site collections for SharePoint. And as it's grown, it's moved into different roll-up engines, as we call them. So we can still aggregate from SharePoint lists and libraries. We can now aggregate from Microsoft Graph entities as well. You can get to search results. So that gives you optimal performance when you're trying to aggregate content from larger scopes. And we can also specify different Microsoft 365 groups that we want to aggregate from also. So these are the different sources that we can connect to in order to get at the content, and then we can build a view. So you could be aggregating from multiple document libraries and looking at documents that have a specific column or metadata in a filter value in common, or we could again go and get things like plans or to-dos from Microsoft Graph and join that with other task applications as well, like task lists. There's different ways of displaying the content, so not just different ways of connecting to the content, but we can also select a grid view that doesn't require any code at all. You can just simply go through and select which columns you want to display from the underlying data source, and you can apply things like conditional formatting and grouping and so on to that in order to be able to build your report. And we've also got some built-in JSON views. You can build your own custom JSON views. These include things like calendar views and Gantt views and so on. And there's also adaptive cards. So you can use the adaptive card designer to build your own adaptive card, or again, use some of our built-in ones. So let's just take a look at the sort of thing we can use this for. So I'm just going to jump back into the same team. And here we've got a couple of views already built. So this is a planner view, and notice here we've got two different views. So there's a planner view and there's a Microsoft To-Do view, and each one is actually quite similar. We can simply go through and select our list that we want to look at inside of Microsoft To-Do, and if we switch to planner, we can choose the plan that we want to look at. So I've got multiple plans here, and once we choose the one that we want, we can go through and tick off those tasks as we do them, and we can also go in and reassign people if we want to, or whatever. So we can interact with this as well, including adding additional plans. Now you might be thinking, well, there's an app for that. There is. There is one that will take Planner and To Do and merge that. But what we can do with the Lightning Conductor is really start to extend this to lots of other types of views as well. So if I go into the settings, notice that these are the two views that we've got. And like I said, inside of Teams, I might want to have lots of content all together that I'm frequently working on. So here I could add a new view, and we can decide what we're going to call that view. I'm just going to call this documents. So I can give it a name, hit the cog icon here, and there's some common common scenarios built into the quick configuration here that doesn't really take any time at all to get those views created. But there's also an advanced mode where you can get really granular in your own selection of what the source is and what columns you want to display and that type of thing. So if I was to connect to documents, I just need to simply select documents, but notice there's other lists and libraries in here as well. So we've got things like tasks and events and announcements. We've also got some of the graph entities like to-do lists and the planner plans and the groups and users, etc., that I can go and get. That doesn't extend to everything that the Lightning Conductor can do. It's just a few different common scenarios that we see. There's different refinements built in as well. So this is just filters. You can of course build your own filters, and in here we've got where we want to get that content from. So I can go against things like the current site and any associated sites if we're using hubs. We can also go against just the current site or current site collection. We can also go and specify teams as well if we want to. And then you'll see a different variation of displaying it. So we've got the grid view, as I mentioned. There's also a JSON view called tiles, and there's some other options like displaying people avatars if you want to, and also a document preview option in there as well. So as I save that, I now get a new view, which is known as documents. So I can select this and see the documents coming from whatever source I specified. And notice that you can expand, collapse those. So unlike just connecting to a document library, we're actually connecting to multiple document libraries here and bringing in that content from each of those libraries. And you can customize these views by going in and adding your own columns. So in here is all the columns that are common across the libraries that you're aggregating from. So if there's an additional column that we would like to see, we can just simply go through and add that to our view. For example, we might want file size. So I could select file size, and we've now got that in here. We could then go through to the formatting of that column, and we can choose a display format. So depending on the type of column, you're going to see the most relevant display formats. You've got column aliases and so on that you can also apply, and that type of thing through here. There's also, as I mentioned, conditional formatting. So if we had, if we wanted to be able to highlight large files, what we could do is go into the formatting of this and say that the file size is greater than, let's just say 5,000. And if that was the case, then we might want to show an icon. So in here, I could look for maybe a little file icon with a warning symbol. We could make it bright red because we want it to stand out. And we could show just the icon or the value and the icon, and we can choose whereabouts we want that icon to show as well inside our view. So once we've done that, we're now starting to get that large file icon indicated to us inside our view here. Okay, so that's just one example of a view. We could quickly connect to some task lists, which would be a great complement to having the planner and to do. So in here we could connect to tasks, and I could bring them in. I'll choose current tenant this time. And notice there's three choices this time around. We've got grid view, calendar, and card view. So this is the same sort of things what you just saw for the document library, but we could also show those tasks in a calendar, and we could also show them in an adaptive card as well. And we'll have a look at that adaptive card in just a moment. So yeah, now we can go through and select our task view. So we're getting all of our tasks now from the current tenant, which are all security trimmed, and we can do things like grouping and so on in here too. So if I just want to group by that column, it's quick and easy to do that. So now we can see all of the high priority tasks altogether, and then the normal priority, and so on and so forth. And once again, we've got things like conditional formatting and adding and moving columns and so on that we can do too. If we want data bars as an example, we can add them, and that just gives us a bit of a visual on how these tasks are progressing and so on. So yeah, from that drop down, we can just simply go through and select which content we want to see and have that local to us there inside of Teams. So I'm just going to show the adaptive cards as well. So of course we perhaps wouldn't call that adaptive cards, but it's a fairly new feature of the Lightning Conductor. So I'm going to come down here to tasks again and pretty much choose the same thing, but I'm going to switch to the card view. And so now if I choose the tasks adaptive cards, we're going to see all of those tasks actually in an adaptive card here. So you can go to adaptivecards.io, design your own view, and you'll then be able to use this to edit the properties and so on. So we could go in and mark these as updated statuses and that sort of thing. Yeah, see those tasks there. And if we jump into the advanced mode on this one, you'll see that under the display is some sample input data and the adaptive card itself. And it's this that we can go through and design inside the adaptive card designer using Microsoft. So yeah, that will basically allow you to preview it, and yeah, you can copy your sample data into the adaptive card designer and design whatever you want. So that's just one view. If I go into the advanced view of tasks, notice that's slightly different. There is no code. It's all just select which columns you want to see and how you want the display to be as well. And inside that advanced mode, you can be very specific about how you're going to roll up your content, what provider you're going to use, how you're going to connect to the data source, and then what columns you want to select and what filters you want to put into place and that type of thing too. So you can get very advanced with the Lightning Conductor and effectively connect to whatever you want when you're building a view and aggregating that content. Okay, and once you're done, you can just simply close that panel there on the right hand side, and it's there for you to use to get to all your content. Okay, so that is the Lightning Conductor. I think there was a question about, is it the same license as SharePoint Online or a separate one? So it's the same. You can use this in SharePoint and in Teams. So yeah, there's no additional license required to use it across both of those apps. All right, so the next product that we're going to take a look at is the data visualization tool. So this is where we're going to bring the data that's important to you, local to you, again, inside of Teams. Now, again, there's other options. There's Power BI and so on. This is intended to be far less complicated than Power BI, but also give you the ability to connect to those things that you need to connect to. So it's as simple as building an Excel chart and bringing that into a Teams tab. So what we're going to do is just have a look at some pre-built ones, and then we're going to go through and create our own. So we did talk about the discussion boards, the first app that we looked at. So we've got the different forum groups and forums with all that content. And one common question that comes up is, can I report on all of this? Can I see how well the forum's being adopted? How many posts are people creating? How long is it taking to get answers to questions and that sort of thing? So all of that can actually be displayed in charts with the data viewer. So in here, we've got lots of different examples of how the data viewer can use. We've got tree maps, we've got multi-series charts, line charts, pie charts, etc. And we've also got some gauges. And towards the bottom here, we've got a grid as well with some conditional formatting showing whether these posts are answered and also how long it's taking for these posts to be answered as well. So the green ones are still in the window of maybe a service level agreement. So they're not yet answered, but that's fine. All the red ones are overdue for being answered. So that's the sort of thing that we can do. And we can either bring in a page from SharePoint with all the charts on it, which is great if you want a dashboard of charts, or you can go in and add the data viewer as a tab and build a single chart, which I'm going to do here. So if I connect to the data viewer, add that as a tab here inside my team, notice that I get to configure it. So we'll just hit configure. And in here, we've got the different data sources that we can connect to. So these include a SharePoint list. We can connect to business connectivity services. So if we were exposing some data through BCS, we could connect to that entity. We also have OData, which is a great way of getting on-premises line of business data into Teams or into SharePoint Online. We have SQL Azure, Excel, or another web part. So this is more applicable to SharePoint than it is into Teams, where we can connect different web parts together. And actually, this option here allows you to take the Lightning Conductor that we've just seen and build a chart on the aggregated content by joining those two web parts together. So depending on what you choose here, you'll notice that the data source tab changes. So here I just specified that I want to connect to Excel, so I get to navigate to where there might be an Excel document that I want to connect to. If I was to connect to SQL Azure, that data source tab is going to expect me to put the information in to connect to that Azure database. If it was BCS, we need to put in the namespace and the entity name, etc. So I'm going to just do a simple example of an OData service and just grab some data here. And we'll display our results in a chart rather than a grid. I'll paste in the URL to that OData service and load some entities. So these are all the different entities that we've got, the different tables and the views coming from that data source. And the one I'm going to work with is this one here. Sorry, just look at my notes. So it's not sales by categories is the one that I'm after. So in here it should be sales by category. So I'm just going to connect to that. And under columns, we can see the columns that are exposed via that entity. So we've got the category name, the product name, and also the product sales. And I can also add calculated columns to this as well. So in here, I'm going to put just profit, and this wouldn't necessarily make sense, but I'm going to do it anyway. So we'll make that as a double. I'm just going to take my product sales, multiply those by 0.3 or something like that. So that could be our profit margin. Okay, so we'll add that and we can drag that where we want it. There we go. We can also apply filters and sorting and so on here. And then when we get to our display, notice we've started off with a chart. It's currently not grouped, so we're seeing things like beverages more than once and condiments more than once and so on. So I can choose which column I want to group by. In this case, it only makes sense to group by the category name, so I'll do that. But this could be also dates that you want to group by, in which case you can group by the different intervals like week or month or year or quarter, etc. And then we get to style the type of chart that we want. So in the drop down here, we've got the different styles with its gauges and tree maps, etc. I'm going to stick with the combo chart. And for our product sales, I can choose an aggregate function. So both of these are going to remain as sum, but I could change it for average or count and so on. And then for things like the category type, I'm going to make this one a column. The color, I'm going to get away from that color. Certainly, let's just choose some like a Lightning Tools blue. That looks good. And we'll save that. And then we want our profit to stand out. So what I'm going to do is choose a bright green and add that. And we could either stick with line, or sometimes area looks good as well for the profit. So once we've got that, we've then got our chart displayed on that tab. And like I say, that could come from multiple different data sources and have that displayed here inside of Teams. Okay, so that was the data viewer. And that certainly helps bring some data from the backend systems into SharePoint or Teams rather. So we also have the permission reporting, and this is something that has been a product of Lightning Tools since 2007, allows you to contextually report and manage permissions as somebody that has full control to the content. So if you were a site owner or a site collection administrator in SharePoint, you can report and manage permissions, but you can also do the same thing inside of Teams as a team owner as well. So the sort of thing that it provides you with is, who has access to your teams. So you can do that on a team by team basis, or you could use DeliverPoint to report on multiple teams at the same time. You can also report on multiple teams at the same time to see what sharing links there are, and remove those sharing links if you want to. And then you could bulk manage for things like copying or transferring permissions between users inside of Teams. So let's have a look at that tool. So this is available as a Teams tab. So I can choose DeliverPoint here on the tabs as well, and it will get the focus for the current team, but show me other teams as well that I might be the owner of. So we can go through and start expanding those. And notice that on the current team, the technical support team here, there's a private channel as well as the general team. So there's two different site collections in the back end with two different access control lists of people that have permissions. So what I can do is actually go through and select those. So I can choose the private channel and I can choose the general team. So those two things here become my scope, and then I can report on them. So I can hit the discover permissions to see who's actually permissioned on these two ACLs at the same time. So the tech support private channel here and the general channel. We can see each user. We can hover over each user to see their person card, and that will sometimes help me determine who these people are before maybe removing their permissions and so on. You can filter by things like permission level or by person too. So if I wanted to have a look at everybody that had full control to these two selected teams, we can get to that information. We can, of course, clear that. And then we can also drill down to see how those permissions came about as well. So most of these permissions are going to be because people are inside the Microsoft 365 group, but there may be also some direct permissions and so on too. And also broken permission inheritance inside of some of the lists and libraries. And if you look at the tree view, we can already see, you might not be able to until I point it out, but the document library has unique permissions versus these other libraries here. And I know that because it's in full color, whereas the others are dimmed. So anything that has a full color icon, it has unique permissions. So what we might decide to do is select the team and select the document library, and from the reports menu, compare those permissions to actually figure out what the difference is. And we can just see that there's one difference there between those two things. So what we might decide is, well, we could just simply go through and re-inherit the permissions for that document library, since that maybe shouldn't be the case. If we're sort of overwhelmed with information as to what's going on here, what we can do is select something like the site collection and come down to a permission summary report, which is a great place to start. I'm going to include the private channels as well. And this provides me with a summary of really what's going on inside this team, like how many sharing links do we have, how many unique permissions do we have, how many dead accounts do we have, and so on. Dead account, by the way, is somebody that's perhaps no longer with the organization. Their AD account has been removed, but they're still assigned to having permissions, or they're still a member of the group, and so on. So that's going to cause confusion. And we've also got a list of external users as well. So each of these things we can click on to see what they are. So if we take a look at the sharing links, for example, let's just come up to this one. It says there's 2 sharing links in these teams. So if I click onto that report, it opens it up as a new tab and shows me those sharing links. So we've got a sharing link on Salesforce, and we've got a sharing link on secret stuff. And we can expand those to see who has access to those sharing links. And if I don't want those to be in place, like there's a sharing link to Brett Lonsdale here. If we have a look at that, it's actually a Gmail account, so Brett Lonsdale's probably not up to any good. So what I could do is simply select that and remove that sharing link, and that'll be removed immediately. So the alternative is go through every file and every folder one by one in each of the private channels and in the team to try and check where the permissions have been shared. This just brings it all up into one single report for you. And we did that in one team, but what we could also do is select multiple teams and check for all the sharing links in all of those teams. So in this case, it's just bringing finance planning, or finance plans, a completely different team that I just selected, but there's a sharing link there as well. Looks like Brett was up to no good again. So that's the sort of thing that we can do and bulk report, bulk manage those permissions inside of SharePoint. And there's lots of things. So transferring permissions between accounts. If somebody was to leave, we could take their permissions and give them to somebody else so that they would have the same access to the same teams as the person that they are replacing. Okay, so that's DeliverPoint, the permissions reporting and permissions management tool running with the scope of Microsoft Teams. Another tool, you're going to think that this isn't really Teamsy. This is more SharePointy. So Lightning Forms is something that you can use to customize the SharePoint list forms and provide custom actions inside of a SharePoint list. And we've got a purchase order example from our previous webinar that I'm going to show you. And the benefit here is that you can actually just use the standard SharePoint app to bring in a SharePoint list to a team. So once we've done that, we can then incorporate the custom forms that we want to work with. So let's just take a look at that in place. We'll jump back to our tech support team, and in here on the drop down we have purchase order. So this is actually just the standard SharePoint app. So the SharePoint app has been added. Notice that you can connect it to pages and you can connect it to lists and libraries. So it's just a single list, a single library, a single page, etc. And they can span multiple sites. So I've connected it to the purchase order list that actually resides in a different site to the one that we're in now. But I can see the different purchase orders that have been created. And we've also got all of our actions across here as well, which include Lightning list actions. So Lightning list actions can allow you to build custom actions on items here. So as I select an item, notice I've got an approve button. This is actually an action that's been built with Lightning list actions that can just simply go through and approve each of the different items that I select and so on. We can also generate documents using the document generator add-on for list actions and Lightning forms. So if we customize or edit one of these, notice that this doesn't really resemble a standard SharePoint form. What we've got in here is different tabs to separate the content. By default, this would be a long list of fields, and it'd be difficult to see what fields are sort of grouped together. And an example of that is the ship to details. So we want all these address details and all the shipping terms and everything to be grouped under one tab, so that if ever we want to come into a purchase order and update the ship to address, we know what we're doing, we know where we're navigating to in order to be able to do that. So I can just simply come in here, add the value that I want to add, and save it. We've also got the ability to add things like sublists. So in here I can add additional things that I want to order on this purchase order. So maybe I want a new mouse, it's a Microsoft mouse. So we'll just put in some information for that and save it. So that becomes an item that I'm ordering, and we could also have another item as well. So I'm just getting a little bit greedy now. I also want a new wide display. Maybe it's a Samsung or whatever. We want one of those, and they're quite expensive. So we'll add one of them too, and we'll just see if we can get away with getting this approved. So we can put that in here, and fortunately I'm in here as the person with full control, and I am an approver, so I could approve that myself. But also under totals here, where I didn't let that one calculate, but yeah, we're summing up the line total, and we can also see the status is already approved, and so on. And notice how we've got things like a signature pad in here as well. That type of thing can all be done using Lightning forms. And when this is approved, I could also generate the document using the document generator. So that is going through and creating that as a Word document, and it's going to store it inside a document library for me. And once it's done that, I can just simply hit the send to vendor, and it's going to send it to the email address under the vendor tab here. Or it's going to do that so that it couldn't open it. It can't override it. I've already created that without the clause to check it already exists. Okay, so yeah, hit send to vendor, and that will email that as an attachment to the vendor and write that message back to me to say it's been done. Okay, so that's the sort of thing we can do with Lightning Forms. You can build a custom form inside of SharePoint lists, and if you need that form to be local to you in Teams, you can get it local to you in Teams on the Teams tab as well as in SharePoint. All right, so they're the existing products that we have. Let's jump in and take a look at the brand new product, MyTeams. So like I said, this is something that is intended by us to be very simple to use and require very little in the way of configuration. The background story to this product is just a personal, I guess, complaint that there's just things that I miss from going from team to team all of the time and not really being able to see an aggregate view of really what's going on across multiple teams. So you can use the activity pane, but sometimes that can be so busy that we're still missing information, or we could use the search, but that can also be difficult to use as well. So this is all about just taking those teams that are most important to you, selecting them and seeing the information from those selected teams that you happen to also be a member of. So what we'll do is just jump back in. And this is also a personal app. In fact, I didn't point out that DeliverPoint is also a personal app as well. That's the permissions tool, so you can access DeliverPoint from here over on the left-hand side. So that allows you to report and manage permissions without sort of selecting a current team as a scope. And MyTeams is also here, so you can go through and access MyTeams. And I've already configured MyTeams. I'm going to show you how it's configured though. Before we do, let's just have a look at the Teams view. So in the Teams view, you can see I've got some pinned teams, but there's also some other teams as we scroll down, and there's also lots of hidden teams as well. So what I don't want to do is have to keep jumping between these teams, or like I say, go onto the activity pane and just see that that's too busy. So I'm going to go into the MyTeams app instead. And in here, we've currently got 3 different views, and that may get extended in the future. And we're going to rely on some of your feedback as well. So if you've got ideas for this, please shout out, because there's other views that we could create inside of MyTeams. But these are the 3 things that came to mind for us. One of them is events, and I want to give a bit of background to this. So if we just, jump back out of Teams, and let's come down here to the tech support team, and we'll go down to Microsoft Viva. So you can schedule a meeting inside a channel. So we'll have a Viva meeting. Maybe it's about the new goals insight or whatever. We can add some attendees, of which I may not be one of them, but I am a member of the team and therefore can access the channel. And there's some information in here, of course, that we could add into that meeting. So we could send that, and that gets created as a Viva meeting, but it's not in my personal calendar because I wasn't invited to it. The only way of knowing that that exists is if you come in here and add the channel calendar. And that has to be added to each channel in order to be able to see the fact that that Viva meeting exists. And even if you had that in every single channel, you're still going to have to go and have a look at each calendar individually to see if there's a channel meeting taking place. So with that in mind, let's just jump back to MyTeams. And what I've done inside of MyTeams is selected the teams that are most important to me, which was tech support, R&D, and research. Oh, sorry, got R&D twice. There's 2 different teams for that. But there's 2 different events that are recurring events. I can see who the attendees are. I can join those meetings. I can add them to my Outlook calendar, and yeah, I can see who the people are and so on, also engaged in those meetings. And there's the Viva meeting that was actually just created a moment ago, already showing up inside this view. So if I just click onto the events configuration, you can see in here, it's showing me all of the different teams that I am a member of. And I've just selected the ones that are most important to me. So there's the R&D. As we scroll down here, we've also got wellness, well-being, marketing, R&D, and so on, that we can just simply go through and turn on or turn off as to whether we want to see content from it inside of our view. We can also choose how much content we want to see. So you've got custom date ranges or certain periods of time that you can go through and access. And up in the right-hand side here as well, we can also change between a grid view or a card view. So if we have a look at the card view, you can see that each team that we're aggregating from has its own column now, as opposed to seeing it in a sort of horizontal format. Okay, so some basic information, hardly any configuration at all, but we've got our events showing up in one place. Now you can absolutely do that with the Lightning Conductor as well, but the Lightning Conductor, obviously, you would need to configure each time. This is something that's kind of already built, and you can just simply access it over on the left here using the MyTeams. Now we've also got app mentions. So these are conversations that we've been mentioned in, taking place in some of these different teams. So if we hit the see posts where I'm mentioned, we've got that with a nice little I'm so excited GIF, and we can see here again which team it came from. We can see the message itself, and we can see who posted that message, and we can go through and view that in Teams and therefore join in that conversation. And that just saves me from having to keep on navigating up and down that Teams panel looking for anything in bold where a conversation may have taken place, whether it mentioned me or not. And if you're anything like me, half the time you're on do not disturb because you're in meetings or something and you miss those banner notifications. So this is just a great place that you could maybe come to following a meeting and see what conversations, if any, you were in. And the configuration for that is very similar. So we can just simply go in, select the teams that we want to be notified about, choose the period of time. So this is set to 3 months worth of conversations. And then also you've got the grid view or the card view for that as well. So just a couple of different configurations there that you can have. And the final tile here is files. So if I click onto view files, no real guesses what's going to happen here. We're seeing files and folders coming from the different teams that, again, are most important to me. So I'm forever looking, was that file in the sales team or was it in the marketing team? Now I can just simply add sales and marketing to my view here and simply go and access those files without having to navigate around. So clicking onto the cog icon, again, allows me to configure that. There's no real other configuration other than just what teams you want to incorporate into that. And those are 3 independent ones as well. So you might decide that there's 4 teams that are important to me for files and only 2 teams that are important to me for app mentions, for example. So we can simply go through and choose that and then navigate to these as you feel fit. So that just takes us straight into that Files tab in order to be able to access those files. Okay, so there is a new question about whether you can get a copy of this recording. Absolutely, yes, you can. It's going to be published probably tomorrow. It will be on our website, lightningtools.com. And then if you click onto the webinars tab, you'll see the recording there. But as you attended this meeting or registered for this meeting, we'll also make sure that you're sent a link to that as well. Okay, so they're the questions I've seen so far, but I'm going to invite you now to come in and ask some questions. In fact, just to point out, first of all, besides Lightning Forms, all of these products here, the Lightning Conductor, Social Square, Data Viewer, Deliver Point, and MyTeams are all available as a suite of tools as well. So there's a great sort of price break there if you go for the suite rather than the individual products, if there's multiple products that you're interested in. But of course, every single product is available independently as well. And you may be using it already inside of SharePoint, in which case you don't need another license, as I answered earlier on. You can just simply add that to Teams and use the product there. Okay, so I'm going to open up for Q&A now. So if there is any new questions that you want to drop into the questions panel, please feel free to do that. There is one in the chat pane as well, so feel free to use the chat pane. I've got them both open on my screen. So app mentions, yeah, I guess this was referring to Social Squared. So can you use @ tags and @ mentions? Yes, you can. So you can, when you're creating a post, you can @ mention a user. So they will be notified the fact that there is a post that they're mentioned in. So yeah, absolutely. Or maybe that was, sorry, referring to MyTeams. Yeah, I just twigged. So yeah, great question. It is, so in MyTeams, it is actually just @ mentions at the moment. But like I said, we are open to suggestions and feedback. And should the API allow it, we can build it in. So yeah, @ tags and tagging the channel that you're in and so on are some options that we could potentially include. So yeah, thank you for that. Wonderful. I know I've answered some questions already. Oh, there's another one here. So regarding SharePoint permissions, is that available to drill down to, or is it just in Teams? So you can use it in SharePoint and Teams, and you can drill right the way down to items, if that's the question. So yeah, you can see all of the items, permissions, and so on as well. In SharePoint, it really works well inside of things like document libraries and so on. So we can just spend a moment whilst we give other people the opportunity to answer questions as well. But let me just bring up SharePoint here. And I'll just go into this team here. It's got a few documents inside the document library. So from a contextual standpoint, one of the challenges that you have in SharePoint is reporting on multiple files or folders. So with a single folder selected, I've got the standard SharePoint Manage Access option. That disappears when you select more than one folder, but notice that I could select as many as I want with Deliver Point, and here is my Discover Permissions and Sharing Links report. So yeah, we can drill right the way down to the item level using that. Okay, yeah, thank you. So can I say something more about the migration tools from Teams post to Social Squared post? Okay, so that is something that I probably misunderstood from earlier on. I was thinking discussion list to Social Squared. So if you've got the posts tab here, so on the posts tab, can we bring this into Social Squared? So this is on our roadmap, has been for quite some time now. And the challenge has been just actually Microsoft, and hopefully their API will allow it, but at the moment it doesn't. How this is going to work is similar to each of these different options that you see at the bottom here. So in the same way that we can, praise somebody or highlight something as an idea or whatever, we're going to have Social Squared as one of these apps. So if you see something on the posts tab where somebody's asked a question and you think this would be better in a discussion forum, you could simply go through and reply to it, say I've added this to Social Squared, and then add it to Social Squared without having to go to Social Squared. So that's the intent. At the moment, our hands are tied to delivering that functionality, but as soon as we can, we will. So sorry, I misunderstood the question earlier on. It's one of those things with trying to talk and think. Okay, I think that's all the questions I see. So I'm just going to thank everybody for joining. I hope you found this useful. If there's anything that you want to try, remember there is a 30-day trial on everything, MyTeams included. You can download that straight away. But yeah, if there's any questions you have at all, even during a trial period, please feel free to reach out to us. Or if you'd like a private demonstration of any of these products that you've seen today, you can book a demo on each of the product pages on our website. And that would land straight into my calendar, and I'll be happy to provide a demonstration based on your exact needs. All right, well, thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of the day and speak to you soon.